What is Project 2025? What to know about the conservative blueprint for a second Trump administration? Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the conversation tonight and welcome to the program. Earlier today, as I was at the gym that I work out in with my workout partner, I couldn't help but see, I think they had about maybe, I'm probably exaggerating, maybe 100 or 200 TV monitors inside the gym, and basically on every channel, all you heard them talking about was President-elect Donald Trump. And one particular network, I call them the racist and bigoted network, they were talking about how wonderful and how beautiful Project 2025 is, and how dismal and pathetic and weak and inept that President Joe Biden has been during the 4 years that he's been in office. Well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm going to have a frank conversation. I'm going to tell you what Project 2025 is. I'm going to lay it all out for you. And you know what gets me more so than anything else? I don't blame MAGA for Trump's election, or re-election, I should say. And I don't even blame the conservatives for him being elected. I put the blame where it should be. For those who thought that Vice President Kamala Harris was such a wicked, divisive, evil person, you all decided for whatever reason and or reasons to allow your personal feelings to get involved in this election. And what's astounding is how many black people turned on her, how the Democratic Party turned on her. I've said it in many videos and I'm going to continue to say it. The Democratic Party abandoned Vice President Kamala Harris. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party abandoned Vice President Kamala Harris. They threw her out into a vast wilderness, an oasis of darkness, in a sea of destruction where the sharks were waiting viciously for her to enter into the ocean of disparity and apathy. The sad thing about it is this election could have been won, but you all made one cardinal mistake. Be careful what you ask for, because you just may get it. So, as I talk about Project 2025 and I lay it all out and talk about it, don't get angry with me. Get angry with yourselves, especially the Latino community, because you all thought you were hurting black people. You're not hurting us. You hurt yourselves. So, as for me, the next 4 years, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to be talking about President-elect or President Donald Trump. I will be finishing up at the university, getting my law degree, and passing the bar. That's what I'm going to be doing for the next 4 years. But this is the last conversation I'm going to have about this. So let's talk about Project 2025, Day 1, Operation Mass Deportation. So I'm going to present this as plainly as it can be presented. And because one of the main things that individuals don't understand is that Project 2025, the blueprint was invoked by President Biden, Harris, and other Democrats throughout the now ended campaign as they sought to sound the alarm about what could be in store if now President-elect Donald Trump won a second term in the White House. So the former president, as you know, he is now the 47th president, and he has secured enough electoral votes to become president-elect. Overseen by the Conservative Heritage Foundation, the multi-pronged initiative includes a detailed blueprint for the next Republican president to usher in a sweeping overhaul of the executive branch. Trump and his campaign worked to distance themselves from Project 2025 in the months leading up to Election Day, with Trump going so far as to call some of the proposals abysmal, quote unquote. But Democrats have continued to try to tie the transition project to Trump, warning what that its policy proposals are what Americans can expect if they elect the former president. Let me just say this. This is just me thinking, why should President Joe Biden even wait around to be insulted? Why should he even wait around to go to the inaugural celebration of his nemesis, his arch nemesis politically, maybe even personally, I don't know, and sit there and be insulted? After all, Trump didn't come to his inaugural celebration. So why does President Biden want to play the ceremonial role of transitioning peacefully out of the limelight and into the sunset and the twilight of his political career? I would just leave. I wouldn't sit around and allow somebody to insult me, to degrade me, and to put me down. That's just my opinion. Project 2025 is a proposed presidential transition project that is composed of 4 pillars: a policy guide for the next presidential administration, a Lankendale-style database of personnel who could serve in the next administration, training for that pool of candidates dubbed the Presidential Administration Academy, and a playbook of actions to be taken within the first 180 days in office. So if you don't like what you hear tonight, that's not my problem. Because I'm not here to make you feel good. And I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm here to present the facts as they are presented to me. And by the way, this is written by CBS News. It was led by 2 former Trump administration officials, Paul Gans, who was chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management and serves as director of the project, and Spencer Creighton, former special assistant to Trump, and now the project's associate director. Gans announced on July 30 that he would be stepping down from his role as head of Project 2025 and departing Heritage in August. Project 2025 was spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation, but includes an advisory board consisting of more than 100 conservative groups. So as you all now know, his entire cabinet that he has assembled and put together, some people who served in his previous administration, and the majority of them are the architects of Project 2025. So much of the focus on and criticism of Project 2025 involves its first pillar, the nearly 900-page policy book that lays out an overhaul of the federal government called Mandate for Leadership 2025, the conservative promise. The book builds on a Mandate for Leadership first published in January 1981, which sought to serve as a roadmap for Ronald Reagan's incoming administration. The recommendations outlined in the sprawling plan reach every corner of the executive branch, from the executive office of the president to the Department of Homeland Security to the little-known Export-Import Bank. The Heritage Foundation also created a Mandate for Leadership in 2015, ahead of Trump's first term. 2 years into his presidency, it touted that Trump had instituted 60% of his policy recommendations, ranging from leaving the Paris Climate Accords, increasing military spending, and increasing offshore drilling and developing federal lands. So let's talk about increased military spending. When you talk about increasing military spending, you're talking about wars. You're talking about the manufacturers of weaponry. And that's why America is going to get involved in several wars over these next 4 years. Who seems to benefit from war? It certainly isn't America. It's the big-time investment billionaires who are behind the scenes, orchestrating every move about everything all the time. Just because you're a billionaire doesn't make you morally upright or a decent person. Just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean that you have ethics and morals. Most rich people, but not all. You have some decent, kind, gentle, God-fearing men and women who are billionaires in their own right, and they do a lot of good deeds, and they don't get credit for them. Then you have the evil-minded, sadistic, heretical billionaires who think they have a messiah like complex, that individuals are supposed to bow down to them and worship them because they have billions of dollars. You won't take one penny with you when you leave. If you don't believe me, check out the life and sad ending of J. Paul Getty. So, in July 2020, the Heritage Foundation gave its updated version of the book to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. The authors of many chapters are familiar names from the Trump administration, such as Russ Vought, who led the Office of Management and Budget, former Acting Defense Secretary Chris Miller, and Roger Severino, who was Director of the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services. Vought is the Policy Director for the 2024 Republican National Committee's Platform Committee, which adopted the platform at July's convention. John McEntee, former Director of the White House Presidential Personnel Office under Trump, is a senior advisor to the Heritage Foundation and said that the group will integrate a lot of our work with the Trump campaign when the official transition efforts are announced in the next months. And you've seen it happen, and we're seeing it happen every day. Candidates interested in applying for the Heritage Foundation's Presidential Personal Database are vetted on a number of policy stances, such as whether they agree or disagree with statements like life has a right to legal protection from conception to natural death, and the president should be able to advance his or her agenda through a bureaucracy without hindrance from unelected federal officials. The contributions from ex-Trump administration officials have led its critics to tie Project 2025 to his re-election campaign, though the former president, well now the president-elect, has attempted to distance himself from the initiative. So, a line-by-line review by CBS News identified at least 270 proposals in Project 2025's published blueprint for the next Republican president that matched Trump's past policies and current campaign promises. CBS News database term extracted more than 700 specific policy proposals from Project 2025's policy guide and compared each one to policies enacted during Trump's first term, as well as his campaign platforms, rally speeches, and interviews. You know, Democrats, let me give you a warning, even though I know you're not going to take heed to it, but somebody has to say it. You all are pathetic. You really are. You won't fight. You won't fight for your constituency. You won't fight for those who put you in office. You act like a bunch of cowards. You're afraid to hold press conferences. You're afraid to open your mouths and speak. You're afraid to stand up for everyday men and women. You're afraid to enact and say what you believe. And you will be the main ones when the first State of the Union address is given, and you will sit there and you will applaud. So, what are the Project 2025 plans? Well, let's talk about abortion and social issues. In the recommendations for the Department of Health and Human Services, the agenda calls for the Food and Drug Administration to reverse its 24-year-old approval of the widely used abortion pill mifepristone. Other proposed actions targeting medication abortion include reinstating some stringent rules for mifepristone's use, which were permitted to be taken up to 7 weeks into a pregnancy instead of the current 10 weeks, and requiring it to be dispensed in person instead of through the mail. The Alliance Defending Freedom is nothing more than a MAGA/Republican nonprofit 501c3 tax-exempted organization. A so-called conservative legal group that is on the Project 2025's advisory board was involved in a legal challenge to mifepristone's 2000 approval and more recent actions from the FDA that made it easier to obtain. But the Supreme Court rejected the case brought by a group of anti-abortion rights doctors and medical associations on procedural grounds. The policy book also recommends the Justice Department enforce the Comstock Act against providers and distributors of abortion pills. That 1873 law prohibits drugs, medicines, or instruments used in abortions from being sent through the mail. So Trump talked about the 1873 law a whole lot. And most of you all had no idea what he was talking about, because I know you all didn't take the time to read and do the homework at all. Now that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade, the volume states that the Justice Department in the next conservative administration should therefore announce its intent to enforce federal law against providers and distributors of such pills. The guide recommends the next Secretary of Health and Human Services get rid of the Reproductive Health Care Access Task Force established by the Biden administration before Roe's reversal and create a pro-life task force to ensure that all of the department's divisions seek to use their authority to promote life and health of women and their unborn children. In a section titled The Family Agenda, the proposal recommends the Health and Human Services chief proudly state that men and women are biological realities, that married men and women are the ideal natural family structure because all children have a right to be raised by the men and women who conceive them. Let's stop right there, because this is a subtle slap in the face to the LGBTQ plus community. You got to pay attention to the wording and the language that things are written in. I know people who come from a traditional male and woman household, and you know what a lot of those fathers are? Rapists, molesters, abusers. They're wife beaters. And because some pastor or some reverend or some bishop or some church leader said they were going to go to hell if they got divorced, I personally know. Listen to what I'm telling you. I'm not talking about what somebody told me. I'm talking about what I know. I know of a woman who is now deceased, who belonged to a Pentecostal church many years ago. And she was in an abusive marriage. And she went to a bishop and told him about it. You know what he told her? That she had to stay married to him because God hates divorce. And told her that if she divorced him, she would go to hell. And that woman went home from that so-called counseling session that night. And that night on the 11 o'clock news, her death was the lead story. Her abusive husband murdered her. He beat her to death. Meanwhile, that same bishop was divorced and remarried. What hypocrisy! And you wonder why I get on the case of you religious, conservative, so-called Christians with your lying, hypocritical tongues and your double-standard lifestyle. You lie, cheat, steal, commit adultery, commit fornication. You get your mistresses to have abortions. You stand up there with your Bibles and condemn homosexuals and homosexuality. Half of y'all are gay. You're a bunch of hypocrites. I said it. In a moment, I'm going to have to take a break, and I'm going to come right back. So don't give me that ideological concept that only men and women are fit to raise children. Further, a program within the Health and Human Services Department should maintain a biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family. During his first 4 years in office, Trump banned transgender people from serving in the military. Mr. Biden reversed that policy, but the Project 2025 policy book calls for the ban to be reinstated, which it will be. So let's talk about targeting federal agency employees and policies. They've already been threatened by President-elect Donald Trump that on day one, they're going to be fired. You think I would sit around and wait for somebody to fire me? You must be crazy. I quit. I would quit the very day that he's inaugurated. I'm out. See you. Peace. Bye. Well, see, a lot of you love your jobs too much. You love the titles. You love the prestige. I wouldn't sit around and wait for somebody to publicly humiliate me and publicly eviscerate me and fire me. I'm out. Goodbye. You don't have to fire me. I leave. I don't care about no severance package or anything else. The agency takes aim at long-standing federal agencies like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. The agency is a component of the Commerce Department, and the policy guide calls for it to be downsized. In other words, they want it abolished. NOAA 6 offices, including the National Weather Service and National Marine Fisheries Service, form a colossal operation has become one of the main drivers of the climate change alarm industry, and as such is harmful to future U.S. prosperity, the guide states. The Department of Homeland Security, established in 2002, should be dismantled, and its agency either combined with others or move under the purview of other departments altogether. The policy book states, for example, immigration-related entities from the Departments of Homeland Security, Justice and Health and Human Services should form a standalone cabinet-level border and immigration policy staffed by more than 100,000 employees, according to the agenda. What has been one of the main themes of this administration, the incoming one, day one, mass deportations. Day one, mass deportations. And you Latinos voted for this because you hate black people? You voted for this. And now you're begging President Joe Biden to put in protective measures for y'all when y'all voted against Harris? Even if Biden did issue an executive order, it would be overturned on day one. There's nothing that can be done to save y'all. Nothing. It's not going to happen. If the policy recommendations are implemented, another federal agency that could come under the knife by the next administration with action from Congress is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's okay for billionaires and millionaires and trillionaires to file for bankruptcy and reorganization under it, but everyday people cannot file for bankruptcy. Everyday people cannot have consumer financial protection. Everyday people have to constantly be in debt and try to figure out how to make things work. But the privileged classes of society, they are afforded every opportunity. By all means, the economy must remain strong, even at the expense of those that are poor. By all means, please preserve everything for the billionaires and keep the billionaires happy. After all, they are more important than any other human species on the face of the earth because they have trillions and billions of dollars. The agency seeks to bring a push by conservatives to target diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives in higher education to the executive branch by wiping away a slew of DEI-related positions, policies, and programs, and calling for the elimination of funding for partners that promote DEI practices. You all voted for this. So don't get pissed off when it's happening. You voted for it. And you know what? I don't blame President-elect Donald Trump for doing exactly what he said he was going to do, because he told you what he was going to do. And this is what he was elected to do. So don't get mad with him when he is fulfilling his campaign promises and doing exactly what he said. When on day one, he said he's going to make sure he pardons all of those who were convicted in the insurrection and the riots that occurred in 2020. It states that the U.S. Agency for International Development staff and guarantees that engage in ideological agitation on behalf of the DEI agenda should be terminated. At the Treasury Department, a guide says the next administration should treat the participation in any critical race theory or DEI initiative without objecting on constitutional moral grounds, as per se grounds for termination of employment. So if you believe in critical race theory and don't support white supremacy, that's grounds for being fired because you have to ideologically agree with whatever they say and go along. Don't you sell your soul like Esau did for a piece of bread. But y'all gonna do it. Oh, yes, you are. Then you're gonna cry out to a God that you don't serve. You don't pray to, you don't believe in, because you believe in the God of money, and the God of sex, and the God of greed. The Project 2025 policy book also takes aim at more innocuous functions of government. It calls for the next presidential administration to eliminate or reform the dietary guidelines that have been published by the Department of Agriculture for more than 40 years, which the authors claim have been infiltrated by issues like climate change and sustainability. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to take a quick break. And when I come back from the break, I'm going to talk about immigration and mass deportation. Tyrone Bowman live. I'll be right back, right after this. ladies and gentlemen, I had to take a quick break. Tyrone Bowman live. I'm talking about Project 2025 and day one, mass deportation with the incoming administration of President-elect Donald Trump. I'm basically breaking down to you exactly what Project 2025 is. And, and right now I'm going to talk about immigration. And the one thing that people must be mindful of, this is what people overwhelmingly voted for. You voted for the agenda, you voted for the policies, you voted for the person. And not did you just vote for him, but you voted for the entire Republican Congressional Caucus. See? This is what you voted for. And don't be surprised when you get what you ask for. So let's talk about immigration and Project 2025 and mass deportation. Trump made immigration a cornerstone of his last two presidential runs and has continued to hammer the issue during his 2024 campaign. Project 2025's agenda not only recommends finishing the wall along the U.S. Mexico border, but urges the next administration to take a creative and aggressive approach to responding to drug cartels at the border. This approach includes using active duty military personnel and the National Guard to help with arrest operations along the southern border. A memo from Immigration and Customs Enforcement that prohibits enforcement actions from taking place at sensitive places like schools, playgrounds, and churches should be rolled back, the policy guide says. Forget that. It's going to be a mass roundup, the way they said in every city in America, with ICE running rampant throughout the streets with the military. Trump said he would use the military to round up to round up illegal immigrants and those who he says are illegally in the country. And even if you have birthright citizenship, they said they're going to revoke it. And like the incoming border czar said, send them all out. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has already pledged his allegiance to work with incoming border czar and the Trump administration. And if you listen to Eric Adams, who is scheduled to go on trial in April, it's sounding more and more like a Republican. I keep telling you all in New York City, you're caught up in the person's color. He's about to pull a major 380-degree turn. He's going to use the Democrats to get reelected to office. Then he's going to defect to the Republican Party. And what's he looking for? A pardon, in case he gets convicted. You don't have to believe me. You can all keep drinking the Kool-Aid if you want to in New York City. I've already seen it. So when the Homeland Security Secretary determines there is an actual or anticipated mass migration of aliens or foreigners that presents urgent circumstances warranting a federal response, the agenda says the Secretary can make rules and regulations, including through their expulsion, for as long as necessary. These rules, the guide states, aren't subject to the Administration Procedural Act, which governs the agency rule-making process. So, what do Trump and his advisors say about Project 2025? In a post to his social media platform on July 5th, Trump wrote, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them," close quote. Trump's pushback to the initiative came after Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts said in a podcast interview that the nation is in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. As he said it. So, Trump continued to disavow the initiative in social media posts, insisting that he knows nothing about Project 2025, and he repeated that message in his debate against Vice President Kamala Harris on September 10th. "I have nothing to do with Project 2025. He said, "I haven't read it. I don't want to read it. Purposely, I'm not going to read it, quote, close quote. In response to Dan's exit from Project 2025, Trump's campaign said the initiative had nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, and should not be associated with the campaign or the president in any way. Reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as a notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent the influence with President Trump in his campaign. It will not end well for you, said Susie Wiles and Chris Lascivia, senior advisors on the Trump campaign. You know, ladies and gentlemen, why can't people know lies when they hear them? You know, there's a song called Tell Me Lies, Tell Me Lies, Tell Me Sweet Little Lies. So, when Trump said he doesn't know who is in charge of the initiative, the project's outgoing director, Dan's, and associate director, Creighton, were high-ranking officials in his administration. Additionally, Ben Carson, you know, the noted surgeon, the noted former director of HUD, Secretary of HUD, the noted, Ben Carson was greatly loved in the black community at one time. Gifted hands. But now, Carson, we care less about you. So, Ben Carson, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Trump. John Ratcliffe, former Director of National Intelligence in the Trump administration. And Peter Navarro, who served as a top trade advisor to Trump in the White House, are listed as either authors or contributors to the policy agenda. Still, even before Roberts' comments during the War Room podcast, typically hosted by conservative commentator Steve Bannon, who reported to federal prison, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to skip that. Now let's go to what the Democrats have to say. Despite Trump's attempts to keep some distance from Project 2025 and his campaign's criticism of the initiative, Democrats continued to connect Trump with the transition effort. Before dropping out of the race, Mr. Biden himself accused his Republican opponent of lying about his connections to the Project 2025 agenda, saying in the statement that the agenda was written for Trump and should scare every single American. He claimed on his campaign social media account on July 10 that Project 2025 will destroy America. In a speech to the American Federation of Teachers on July 25, Harris also knocked Project 2025. So what else does Project 2025 have to do with Trump? So what are the Republicans saying about it? Well, let's find out. GOP senators, grand old party, including Trump's running mate J.D. Vance, now the Vice President of the United States elect, have sought to put space between the White House hopeful and Project 2025, casting it as merely the product of a think tank that puts forth ideas. I heard a news conference today on the Racist and Bigoted Network where they stated emphatically that day one, phase one of Project 2025 will go into effect. So who's lying and who's telling the truth? So before he was selected as Trump's vice presidential pick, Vance told NBC's Meet the Press that organizations will have good ideas and bad ideas, not all of which Trump agrees with. It's a 900-page document, he said in July. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about the 900-page document. But he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration. So, Project 2025. This is going to be an interesting 4 years. And ladies and gentlemen, do not be surprised of the unpredictable that's going to happen. So, Project 2025, day one mass deportations. Come January 1, 2025, it's going to be a hell of a ride, people. And whether you like it or not, I close by saying this. You voted for it, you endorsed it, You co-signed it. So now you have no choice. Do not complain. Do not write. Do not editorialize. And I'm telling you, the national press is going to turn on Trump. Oh, they're going to turn on. You want to know why? Because they have to sell newspapers. They have to make money. So if they just say all flowery and wonderful things about him all the time, they aren't going to make any money. So all the major networks who now are praising him, they're going to turn on him. You'll see. Once the quote unquote honeymoon period is over, then they have to find something negatively that they're going to report about and that they're going to say. They're going to find fault. They're going to talk about his age. They're going to watch him very closely like they watch Biden. They're going to look for signs of dementia. They're going to look for signs of senility. They're going to look for signs of him slowing down. And they're going to purview everything and try to justify their negative image of him that they present. Well, with President Biden getting ready to exit off the grand stage, personally, Biden was not as pathetic as that you all say he was. But you all don't want to hear about the positives that the Biden-Harris administration has accomplished. Democrats, get your shift together. Reorganize, regroup, come back in 2028. Never surrender, never quit.